From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
San Diego's Comic-Con is the world's biggest celebration of comic books, superheroes, and pop culture, drawing hundreds of thousands of fans every year since it launched in 1970. And my guest today, by the time he graduated high school, he had a collection of 30,000 comic books, and he's reportedly never missed this iconic Southern California convention. That's the kind of lifelong passion and commitment we are talking about. Listeners, please welcome the originator and executive producer of the Batman and Batman-related movie universe, Michael Uslan. Michael, I am so happy to have you here today.
Kevin, I have been waiting for this moment.
Oh.
I think we share a brain.
I was about to tell you 6 degrees of Michael Uslan, because although we never really worked on a movie together, I've worked on several of the movies that you've been involved with, but you and I have never worked together. We have so many common threads.
It is mind-boggling how many threads we have.
Sharon Stone.
Yes.
Mimi Craven.
Yes.
Aaron Foyer, who works as one of my VPs of the movie group.
My second son.
And by the way, best friends with your son, David.
Yes.
And, of course, his parents. It goes on and on, but wow.
The longer we talk, the more we find we have these threads that bring us together. It's really incredible.
So let me start with a Jersey boy to a Jersey boy.
Yeah.
But you were Bayonne and grew up in Monmouth County.
I can clarify it.
Please.
I was born at exit 14C.
Okay.
Grew up at exit 14A. Moved to exit 105
on the
and
Garden
now
State.
On the Garden State Parkway.
That first for the Turnpike, by
correct.
The way, for
and
those
now,
people who don't know.
Oh, yeah, you have to know how to speak Jerseyese. Now I live at exit 145.
Now?
Yeah.
You're in Springsteen territory?
Yeah, I grew up down the street practically from him.
Asbury Park and Colts Neck.
Yeah, Belmar, going all the way back.
That was my beach. Belmar was my beach. Michael and I are destined to be in each other's lives and to be dear, dear friends. We were just at a wedding. Aaron, of course, and his beautiful bride, Stephanie.
Yes.
In San Diego, which is, again, what I brought up earlier. San Diego, not an unfamiliar town for you. I mean, that was your playground with Comic-Con for years and years and years.
Absolutely. And actually, before San Diego Comic-Con existed, it was New York Comic-Con.
In a dingy hotel, wasn't it?
Yes, the Broadway Central.
Oh, God.
It was probably...
What year are we talking?
1965. Kevin, it was probably palatial the weekend of Lincoln's inauguration. But in 1965, it was virtually collapsing upon itself. It was horrible.
What I love about you, among many things, is the fact that you are living proof of finding your love at the earliest age, which I can relate to, by the way, and very few of us can, and never really veering from your leitmotif, the thing that really sparked your passion, your love, comic books.
Truly. My mom told me I learned to read before I was 4 from comic books. And they were always around me. I have an older brother, Paul, who brought them initially into the house. My older brother was a superstar at every sport he ever did. And I grew up living in that shadow.
Just the two of you?
The two of us.
Is he still with us?
Yeah, he is an optometrist in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and loves what he does also.
He's still into comic books?
No, he has let me run with that ball. But he loves his optometry business.
Well, you've been mildly successful with taking that ball. I can't even fathom how I begin this conversation because you have so many credits. You're so accomplished. But I do want to start with one of my favorite shows, my entryway into the Batman universe, and I know you have an opinion about it. And my brother Peter's favorite show, which was the Batman series in the 60s, probably the bane of your existence. Tell me about it.
Nah, 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 nah.
To any purist, it is the Antichrist.
It was, because by that point in time, Kevin, I was a hardcore comic book fan. I was already involved in the history of the comic books and the superheroes. I lived an hour outside of New York City. And it turned out I learned that all the great creators, writers, artists, editors of the comic books, they lived either in New Jersey or Long Island or New York City, because the whole industry was really based in New York at that time. So thanks to my parents supporting my crazy interests, on weekends I would go and visit these creators in their homes and interview them. And they opened up the world of comic books and comic book lore.
Like as a teenager?
Starting at age 12.
Wow.
And that became such an important part of my life. But I met the creators of Batman. I met Bob Kane and I met Bill Finger. I'm one of the only people alive today that met Bill Finger.
But they were literally the creators from what year are we talking?
1939 Batman.
But Kane went on to do the series.
Kane survived Finger.
Aha.
Finger never got the money and never got the credit and died penniless in an unknown grave.
Oh, Lord help me.
And there's been a big effort thanks to Mark Tyler Nobleman, Bill Finger's granddaughter Athena, and a bunch of us who worked hard over the years to get him credit as the co-creator of Batman.
Very menschy.
And to get his estate paid for the contribution. And that's been an important part. But so I met these guys. They told me how Batman was created. They told me what the vision was for Batman in 1939 when they created it. And it was not to make Batman into a joke. It was not to make him into a comedy, to have people all around the world laughing at Batman. So as someone who was schooled by the creators, that was anathema.
But the creator did it.
Bob Kane went along with DC Comics in a very lucrative deal to bring Batman to TV.
Did he regret it?
No, he didn't regret it. He enjoyed anything that made a dollar. And he had, I don't even want to go into this, but he had somebody actually draw paintings and lithographs and things for him that he put his name on so he could sell them and get into art galleries. You know, there's a dark side to the story. But for me, it was about defending and protecting Batman.
So when that series came on, you really, even at that age, you were a teenager, you didn't root for it? You watched it?
I will tell you now the secret origin of Michael. The secret origin starts at the end of the first episode of the Batman TV show. It was January 1966.
Of the first episode?
First episode.
Wasn't that Jill St. John in that? The only villain who died was Jill St. John. She's a friend of mine. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, it might have been the first episode.
She was on the top of that tanker and she fell to her death. It was the cheesiest thing ever. I've never seen anything. In fact, Burt Ward, who played Robin and Jill, changed identities.
I remember that. I should thank her someday because diamonds are forever.
Yeah. Many a straight man have said that. Hey, so go back to the first episode, ended the first episode.
So, look, it was in color, which was not too usual at that time. Somebody was spending a lot of money on the sets. The Batmobile was cool. The opening animation kind of looked like Bob Kane, Jerry Robinson artwork from the comic books. But when I realized that they were laughing at Batman and he was a joke, I made a vow. In my downstairs den in front of my two friends, Bobby and Barry, who egged me on, I made a vow like young Bruce Wayne once made a vow. He made a vow over the bloody bodies of his parents who had just been killed in the street. My parents were safe upstairs in the kitchen, but I made my vow anyway. And I said, somehow, someday, I will show the world the true Batman, the dark and serious Dark Knight who fights these deeply disturbed villains from the shadows. And I dedicated myself, and this is at about age 15. I said, I am going to find some way to remove from the collective consciousness of the world culture these words that are bombarding me. Pow, zap, wham. And that was probably the hardest thing to do of all.
And it took you almost a dozen years to get anyone to pay attention to a new, reinvented, reimagined Batman the way you saw him and how he should have been portrayed initially.
From the time that my Batman partner Ben Melniker and I purchased the rights to Batman, which was October 3rd, 1979, till the first movie actually came out after being rejected by every single studio in Hollywood and every mini major. It was 10 years, which I describe as a human endurance contest. And they told me I was crazy, that it was the worst idea they ever heard.
Let me hear some of the people and some of the comments that were made along the way.
Well, one of my friends, who I'm sure you know, I used to work at United Artists when it was a major motion picture studio.
We should let our listeners know you are an attorney by trade. You went to school to be an attorney, and right out of school, you went to United Artists, right?
Correct, age 25.
Got it. And
I wound up pitching it to the head of East Coast production at that time at United Artists. He listened to my pitch. I pitched my heart out for my dark and serious Batman. And he said, Michael, you're crazy. Batman and Robin will never be successful as a motion picture because the movie Robin and Marion hasn't done well at the box office.
So the commonality was the word Robin?
It's the only thing. For any listeners who don't know, back around 1979, this was a movie with Sean Connery and Audrey Hepburn about an aging Robin Hood and Maid Marian. So what do I do with that, Kevin? I walked out of the room stunned. I had been rejected by UA for that reason. And periodically over the next 10 years, I would go sit on the top of a mountain in a lotus position and ponder what he said to me. And I could only conclude that the word Robin was the nexus.
I don't even know what you do with that information. And I don't think you can top that story with anyone else who's going to shit on your project.
Oh, I can.
Don't you love the naysayers? The revenge is a dish best served cold.
Absolutely. Kevin, my whole life has been about rejection and how you deal with it and how you don't let it overcome you, pull you down.
100%, which is so easy. And so many people want to do it to you.
Oh,
they want to keep you down.
Of course.
You know? And then when you make it, they want to get you off your pedestal. Often that's the case, I guess, in any business, but very prevalent in ours.
Oh, yeah.
But go ahead. So you were saying...
So I was pitching at Columbia.
This is within that 10-year period.
This was, I would call this sometime in the early 80s.
Okay.
And the guy who was there, who was a friend of my partner Ben's for like 25, 30 years, dapper, silver hair guy. And I'm pitching my heart out on the dark and serious Batman. And he just turns to me and goes, Michael, you're nuts. Batman will never be successful as a movie because our movie, Annie, hasn't done well. Kevin, I looked at him and I go, are you talking about the little redhead girl from Broadway who sings the song Tomorrow? He goes, yeah. I go, well, what does that have to do with Batman? He said, oh, come on, Michael. They're both out of the funny pages.
Well, listeners, you got a project no one wants to do. You believe in it more than anyone else. Just make and market it for the right price.
You said
and
it.
You'll make money, but make sure you do it for the right price, which means you have to understand what you had. And Michael understood, you understand, and have always understood what you had. I was curious that you are executive producer on all of these Batman movies. Fast forward to many years later. I guess among many contributions, probably your strongest contribution was that of brand asset manager to guard the integrity of your vision.
I love how you sum that up because that triggers a story. After the Annie experience, we had now been turned down by every studio in Hollywood. Ben, who was my dad's age, and I are sitting on like a park bench on the studio lot. I have like my head between my legs. I am so beside myself. And what had just happened after that Annie moment, the executive turned to me and said, listen, Ben, I've known you for a long time. If you boys really want to make a Batman movie, I will consider it. But it's got to be the pot-bellied funny guy with the pow zaps and the whams from TV, because that's the only one audiences will remember and love.
In fairness, I could understand that, at least. That makes sense to me, because you do have to re-educate and kind of reimagine something and get audiences to buy into it. So it's not as bad as those other people who shat on your property.
No, it is not. And had I not been a student of Batman history and known the creators and heard from them what the vision was and what they wanted, and was a fanboy, that knowing the dark Batman was the only way to protect the integrity of the character, I said to him, no. And he pulled his chair up in front of me, Kevin, and he leaned in and he said, son, and I know whenever anyone calls me son, I'm in trouble. Son, better to have a movie made than no movie at all. And I looked at him and I said, no.
How old were you?
30?
Incredible. And you hadn't made a movie yet?
No.
That's nerve. That's chutzpah.
Or insanity. So what Ben said, we're sitting on the park bench. I'm beside myself. Ben said, you know, Michael, it's very ironic. The last no we received for Batman came from you. He said, you know what that makes you? I said, yeah, Ben, an idiot. He goes, no. You have this vision for Batman that you completely believe in, that you think his creators would believe in, and you just turned down a boatload of money and a chance to produce your first major motion picture in order to protect Batman. He said, Michael, you're Batman's defender. You're Batman's Batman.
I love that.
And he said, now, let's get up off this bench. There's other sources besides studios. There's independent financing, foreign financing. We have to redouble our efforts. Let's go. And we jumped up off that bench. My whole attitude changed and ultimately jumped into history.
And how did we get to ES? Tell us that story.
So Ben came to me one day. He said, I got a call from Gordon Stolberg. Now, Gordon at that time was the former president of 20th Century Fox. He said he's working with Polygram over in Europe, and they are about to put a cash infusion into Peter Guber and Neil Bogart's company, Casablanca Records, and they're going to open a film division. So Ben said, back in 1969, I tried to hire young Peter Guber to run MGM in a troika with Barry Beckerman and Jerry Tarkovsky. He said, ultimately, Peter decided to go with Columbia. But he said, he's much younger than the execs you've been pitching to. He's hipper, and maybe it'll resonate with him. So he got Peter on the phone. We're in New York, Peter's in LA. And I pitch it over the phone. And Peter says, this sounds really unique, really interesting. Can you be in my office tomorrow and give me the full pitch? I said, can't. I'm in New York, but I can be there the day after tomorrow. He said, fine. So we fly out to LA, Sunset Boulevard, the old Casablanca Records building. And I meet Neil and I meet Peter and Barry Beckerman, who is Peter's head of development, who Ben knew from the MGM Troika attempt. And I pitched it. And for the first time, I had an executive who was so excited. He was pacing back and forth in the room and just saying, okay, he goes, we have an output deal with Universal. Rafi Etkes is the president of production at Universal. He's my friend. This will be a put deal to Universal, and let's get cracking.
Did you have a story already by that time?
I had a 17-page memo.
Got it. I thought you were just pitching kind of the character, the tone, the mood, the style, but you had a 17-page story.
It wasn't just a story. It was really more of a Bible. It was a breakdown so that they would understand Batman and Alfred and Commissioner Gordon and the villains, also with a list of potential actors who could play the role. I remember from my original
You
list,
were prepared.
Yeah, I was prepared.
You were ready.
But Kevin, this is so long ago now that the actor I had as an example of who would make a great Commissioner Gordon was William Holden.
He would have.
And who would make a great Alfred was David Niven. That's how long ago this was.
Genius. And they both would have been great.
They would have been great.
So Peter Guber was really the guy who said yes.
Never would have happened without Peter.
Wow. And how long did it take to get into production on the first movie?
9.5 years.
From that, yes.
Yes. This is what my memoir, The Boy Who Loved Batman, is all about.
Listeners, you've got to read this book, The Boy Who Loved Batman. It's your memoir and starts from when you were a young boy.
It does.
And your passion in comics and leading into Batman, but many comics, stories and characters and so forth, right?
I collected everything. I read everything. I met Stan Lee when I was 11 years old, and he became my mentor and later my friend and my creative partner on some projects. And when he died, my son David and I were two of the producers of his memorial at Grauman's Chinese Theater.
I'm very well aware, and we are going to talk about that in the second half of our interview. I don't want to step on the question that I asked you about the 9.5 years to get to the first Batman, which was just called Batman?
Yeah, I think I had suggested the Batman, because to me, the in front of Batman was the signal to the world. This was not the funny guy. This was the dark original, the Batman. The carried a lot of weight.
But ultimately, it was just Batman.
Ultimately, it was Batman. But many years later came The Batman Part 1.
But also, they had an output deal with Universal, but it was released through Warner Brothers.
Correct.
So there's part of that is the story.
Oh, yeah. Because, oh my God, it's so convoluted. Etkes left Universal, and then Casablanca changed its deal to Filmways because he went over and became, I think, the president of Filmways. Then Orion bought Filmways. So then the deal went for about 10 months in negotiation with 20th Century Fox. Deal couldn't be secured at the end of the day, couldn't come to terms, and then Warner Brothers came in. Now, here's a story. Warner had a right of first refusal under my contract with DC Comics. Of course, Warner Brothers owned DC Comics. So my partner, Ben, called Warner Brothers, the vice president who was in charge at the time, and said, we want to come in. We've closed the deal on Batman. We have a whole concept for the show for how we want to do it. We want to come in and pitch it to you. And we got a telex back. This, I don't even know how to describe telex to the listeners.
It made a...
Yeah. It was like a hybrid between a telegram and email.
And a fax.
And fax, yeah. And it basically said, we have no interest in this. Goodbye and good luck. They didn't even want us to come in and pitch.
Devastating.
Yeah. I actually reprint that telex in my book, The Boy Who Loved Batman. So
another reason to buy the book.
Yeah, we didn't even get the chance. So it was a couple of years later that Warner Brothers actually came into it.
Why? What made Warner Brothers come in?
Peter convinced them.
Aha. Was he an executive there?
By that time, Casablanca, I think, was transforming into Polygram Pictures.
I see. And now, how did you make money during this time? Were you at UA still?
No, I had to quit my job in order to do this.
But what did you do for 9.5 years to make money?
First of all, I quit UA when my wife was 9.1 months pregnant.
Oh, geez.
And said goodbye to my medical insurance, my dental plan.
Okay, that's ballsy or insane?
I couldn't have done it without her full support. I had a great support system with my parents, her parents, my brother, my friends. You can't do this alone. You've got to have people that believe in you and back you.
Did they actually give you the money to follow your dream?
No, actually, they offered. Nancy's parents offered, but I wouldn't take it from family. I had been told you do not take investment money from family.
So what'd you do?
I went to a network of friends, doctors, dentists, lawyers.
And sold them shares.
Sold them shares of this venture. It wasn't in the company. It was in the project. So it was in the first Batman movie.
So you never had to pay beyond. That's smart.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting piece of this puzzle. So you were very resourceful.
I have to say that all these friends and all their connections, nobody knew a damn thing about Batman.
But they believed in you.
They were investing in me. And that put another layer of responsibility on my shoulders.
That's super cool, man. That is just great. I've always banked on myself when I've been asked to take stock in another company. I'm like, no, I'll take stock in myself. I believe in me and I believe what I can do. And it's wonderful when you have people that also really believe in you and what you can accomplish. Really, it's really very moving. When we come back, we're going to talk to Michael about Stan Lee, among other things. We'll be back in a moment. If you're curious about how movies actually turn a profit, I've got something for you. My upcoming book, How to Score in Hollywood, dives into the intersection of creative instinct and audience insight and where the business of film meets the art of storytelling. The book is available for pre-order now on your favorite bookseller platform. I'm also putting together a book launch team, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. We're looking for people to help spread the word ahead of our November release and also to leave a short book review after its release. In exchange, you'll get early access to the book, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and more. Sign up to join my launch team or for book updates at kevingetz360.com. And as always, thank you for your support. We are back with the wonderfully committed, passionate, and exemplary producer and man, Michael Uslan.
And a little insane.
And a little insane, which I agree with and part of the alchemy of your success, I imagine. So tell us about Stan Lee, because Stan, my understanding is that Stan actually came to you because there was a lot of press and publicity when you were a student at Indiana University. And while you were in school, you were actually teaching the first accredited course, and it was on comic books?
First in the world, first college accredited course on
And you're a
comic
student.
books. I was a junior.
It's beautiful. So he gets wind of this because that brought a lot of attention to you and your collection. What was that like to get that phone call?
Do you remember the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston?
The parting of the Red Sea.
No, it was.
Oh, no.
It was when the burning bush appears and starts talking to him.
So God appeared.
Oh my God! Yeah, this was my God. This was my burning bush.
Well, how did it work?
So I got in a lot of publicity.
The registrar saying, Michael, you have a message from...
Nope, better than that, Kevin.
Good.
Better than that. This course got tons of publicity. I was on radio and TV talk shows. Every class I taught, there were television cameras and reporters, John Chancellor, NBC Nightly News, Parade Magazine, Playboy, I mean, everything you can imagine. And all the PR's out there. I've been teaching for 2 weeks and my telephone rings. And it's this exuberant male voice. And he goes, "Hi, is this Mike Uslan?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Hiya, Mike. This is Stan Lee from Marvel Comics in New York City." Boom. Frozen.
Mic drop.
Frozen. Mic drop. And he said, "Mike, everywhere I look, I'm seeing you on TV. I'm hearing you on the radio. I'm reading about you in newspapers. What you're doing is great for the entire comic book industry. How can I help you?" That was the conversation.
And after you said, homina, 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 what was your next?
The next thing is I asked him if he could send me some comics and support material, if he could send me artists and writers to lecture at my class, which he did. And we developed a connection. And that was
And
the
Marvel
moment.
was really not Marvel.
They were growing, but this is like 1972.
I remember as a kid a Marvel comic, but like nothing beyond that.
No.
So it was really inside baseball, wasn't it?
Yeah, in a large way it was. And it was magic time for me. The fact that he took me under his wing, the fact that I could talk to him, ask questions, it was an incredible relationship to have.
I just want to say that this harkens back to Aaron, who works for me, Aaron Foyer,
Yeah.
coming up to you at what, age 12 or something?
Yeah, that's right.
And saying, "Oh my gosh, I want to learn everything. Can you teach me about the business? Can you teach me what can I?" Tell me that.
He was an exuberant little kid. And this all happened at a bat mitzvah, or as I like to say these days, a bat mitzvah. And, he was right there in my face, just filled with energy and a zillion questions. And
What did he want to do then?
he wanted to be an actor. And I'm telling him all the reasons you should run screaming into the night and go into your dad's business or do
I'm
anything.
surprised about that, actually.
Oh, yeah. No, I try to scare him out of it.
Right, because if you can do anything else, do it, is what we always learned when I was at the acting conservatory, was if you could be that easily persuaded to not do it, meaning you have to have a reason to stay with it.
That's exactly right. You try to scare them off, and the ones that don't get scared have the best chance of success.
Understood. Sorry, so I derailed us, but it speaks to you as a man and what you are essentially doing, which is paying it forward. You
have to. If this is not ultimately about legacy, then what's the point? It's why I go back every year to Indiana University and I teach 2 intensive courses for 3 weeks. I take on a lot of different roles there to be helpful. I was the commencement speaker in front of what turned out to be 34,000 people. And I'm happy to report my commencement address was declared by USA Today to be one of the 10 top commencement addresses of all time.
Well, you don't think you've listened to mine.
I have not. I have not. We should do a dog and pony show.
I actually am very, very proud. I took it so seriously when I was asked to give the commencement speech at Mason Gross School of the Arts at Rutgers. It was one of the proudest moments for me. And I still get calls today from kids who remember it. It's on YouTube for those who want to check it out. But I thought it was a really seminal moment for me. So I get it. I get what you're saying. It's so special.
It really is. and you're impacting so many people.
Yeah.
And I've gotten feedback over the last 10 years from that speech as how it convinced people to try, to take their shot, to believe in themselves.
I'm still floored by you saying no when you had that offer on the table. That is just spectacular and a great lesson. Tell me, and I know you are asked this a million times, and I almost never ask this question because it's terribly obvious. What do you tell now a young filmmaker, a young person getting in the business that wants to get into comics or movies based on comic books or graphic novels? What do you say to them? Because I know that Comic-Con is filled with people with thousands of ideas. How do they get into it?
As are our schools. So number one is you've got to have your age of exploration. You've got to discover your passions in life. And once you discover that passion, you've got to get up off the damned couch. If you have a misguided sense of entitlement that the world owes you something or the world's going to come to you, you're sunk. You got to get up off the couch. You got to be proactive. And one of the things I learned early on was that I had a misconception. I thought that this career of mine was going to be a war. And every day I was going to go to battle and fight a war for my projects. It's not that at all. It's a siege. This is a siege. You have to dig a foxhole, put on a helmet, hunker down. And the most important...
What do you hunker down with? What do you do?
Well, first thing you do is figure out who you allow into that foxhole to watch your back. That's maybe the most important thing of all. I screwed up 3 times on that one.
You mean you had 3 partners that burned you?
Almost drove me out of the business.
Wow.
Terribly, terribly important. And when it comes to things like movies or comics, I teach my class that if you want a job in this industry, that means you're going to have to appear before an old fart like me in an interview, and you got to get through me. So what's going to happen? You're going to come into my office and you're going to tell me how passionate you are about movies. Why are you passionate? I see everything, and I watch all the TV shows. And I'm going to say, oh, really? Geez, that's great. So tell me, what's your favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie? What's your favorite Frank Capra movie? Now, if you look at me like a deer caught in the headlights, your ass is going to be out of my office in a second and a half. A second and a half. If you're telling me you're passionate and have not taken the time to learn how we got here, who got us here, how this has all evolved, I don't want to know from you. Step 1 of the whole process.
Do you believe in this idea? I've encouraged people to do this. If they have a good, dark, kind of universe building idea, is to craft a graphic novel, reverse engineer it, in other words, and then have something that your now idea is based on. Because then there's some underlying intellectual property. Are you a fan of that sort of idea?
I'm not simply a fan. I'm an original subscriber. And it is of critical importance in our industry, to not just our industry, whether you're talking about movies, TV, animation, theater, Broadway, it's all about brand. It's about brands and franchises. Brands, brands, brands.
That's the name of your company.
Yeah, branded entertainment. That's exactly right. You mix that with star power. Those are the 2 things that are really governing right now. If you want to get financed in distribution, if you don't want to be lost among the clutter that's out there through streaming and television and everywhere else, when it comes time to vote in the Emmys, I'm now getting, it seems like 250 things that are being submitted. And I sit with my kids who are both in this industry, and we look at all of them. And among the 3 of us, we never even heard of 2/3 of these things.
Absolutely. 100% agree with
Clutter. So you need the brand.
And by the way, half of those 2/3 are damn good.
I will go along with that.
There's an audience for them.
If you can be discovered.
And that's really your point, is let's assume that most everything that makes it on air is pretty decent, if not downright good, or even very good. But how do you learn about it? So to your point, if you don't have something that's going to pull you out of that sameness, you're kind of stuck. I mean, how do you get beyond that?
There's a financial element to this too. Let's say you're a writer and you've got an original screenplay that you want to start a franchise or you want to do something. It's exactly what you said. If instead of going out with an original screenplay, which makes life even tougher, and you don't have a brand attached, you reverse engineer your brand. So you make the deal for a book or a graphic novel. And then you can hold in front of an executive's face
Exactly.
a solid project that they know somebody invested money into and that it's out there. And that's critically important. Now, financially, as a writer, you're now the literary property owner. So if you make a deal, you're going to get an option payment. You're ultimately going to get a literary purchase
In
price.
music world, it's like the master use and the publishing rights.
Correct. And then on top of that, you're being paid for a screenplay, whether it's one draft.
It's like
two
you
drafts,
holding
or more.
both forms of those. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really smart.
And you've added so much income.
Indeed. So I'm glad I've sort of advised people to go in that direction. Stan passed away. I know you mentioned you guys had a lifelong relationship, and then you honored him in such a magnificent way at Groman's Chinese. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we did this with Legion M, which is an organization made up of fans. And it was just wonderful. We had a lot of people there from Kevin Smith was moderating, people from Mark Hamill to Lawrence Fishburne to RZA, people from the TV shows and the movies, as well as from the world of comic books. And it was kind of a This Is Your Life, Stan Lee retrospective. It was an entire day long. And I have to say, I kicked it off in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater the way I knew Stan would want this to go.
Which was
me standing up there and going, none of this would exist. There would be no Marvel Universe. This was not a one-man show. These were done with Stan and his co-creators, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. I had Jack Kirby's granddaughter come up, Steve Ditko's nephew come up, and make sure everybody understood this was a co-creation process of many people.
collaboration.
Yep. That's how he would have wanted it.
In a sentence, describe him to me.
Exuberant, funny, smart, creative, and filled with life and love.
You're getting emotional.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't apologize. He touched you deeply.
Yeah.
We all have people, I think, or hopefully lucky enough to have people who inspired us the way he inspired you. What is the now legacy of Stan and the Marvel Universe, and where are we heading with it?
I believe that Stan and his co-creators are today's version of not only Walt Disney, but Homer. I think they have given us a modern day mythology.
Archetypes.
Yes. And it doesn't matter.
That's Jungian. I mean, that's very, very deep.
It is very deep and
Psychologically,
meaningful.
yeah.
And that's what transcends cultures as well as borders. It doesn't matter, Kevin, if we call them King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table or the Avengers. It's the same thing. It's about hope, redemption. It's about the journey of the hero. And that's what they've given us.
Do you like where Marvel's going right now?
I'm a big fan of Kevin Feige.
Well, what a major talent.
Oh, Kevin worked with us back on the days of Constantine when he was with Lauren Schuler Donner. I believe in Kevin.
See, he said it again, folks. I believe in Kevin, which, again, if you don't have that strong visionary and leadership, you're kind of sunk.
Yeah, DC has it now,
It's what
too.
you did for the Batman franchise. That was you. That is you.
Well, today it's DC Films, and you've got James Gunn and Peter Safran over there who are just getting started with Superman. That's going to be really their big debut, and I believe in these guys.
Have they reached out to you to consult with you at all?
Peter's great. You know, we
Peter
have
is
a
great.
wonderful, wonderful relationship.
I worked on many, many movies with Peter over the years.
And as I've told them, right now, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 74.
You look marvelous.
Oh, thank you so much.
You look marvelous.
I am now their biggest cheerleader.
It's great.
I am now Batman's biggest cheerleader. Batman will live forever because he's human.
Yeah, I want to talk about the future of superheroes in general. I think what you did and what Stan did, and I know Stan talked about this publicly, was humanizing these characters, making them feel and come to life in a way that we could all relate to. And that goes back to the archetypal nature of these characters. But even more than that, these are like flawed individuals. Is that the secret of the great superheroes?
It is. And here's what happened. I'm at lunch with Stan at Nate Nowell's. So we're there, and the Iron Man movies had come out, and the first Spider-Man movies came out. And Stan said, you know, Michael, there would be no Marvel Cinematic Universe if it wasn't for you guys. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, if it wasn't for Batman 1989. I said, explain. He said, you humanized Batman. The movie was not about Batman. It was about Bruce Wayne. That changed everything. And that was Tim Burton's idea. That was Tim Burton's big idea. That was the game changer. That would change the entire world's perception of comic books, superheroes, and supervillains. And he said, think about it. The key to opening the door to the Marvel Cinematic Universe was that our Iron Man movies should really be called Tony Stark. Yeah. Our Spider-Man movies should really be called Peter Parker.
Genius.
And that's only based on what was learned from Batman 1989.
Absolutely. Makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
How did you get Tim Burton?
I got a call from Roger Birnbaum.
Oh, the best.
You know, this Batman franchise would not be without Roger. He is one of the secret powers behind this franchise having been given birth. Roger said, want you to see the fine cut of a movie. I said, fine. So I went over to Warner Brothers. I saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the fine cut. And he said, what'd you think? I said, I think it is the most creative combination of direction and art direction I've ever seen in my life. He said, well, there's this young animator who's now directing. Anyway, they set up 3 lunches for me with Tim. And at the first lunch, my job was to indoctrinate him into the world of the dark and serious Batman. And just as importantly, keep him far away from the goofy, corny, crazy stuff. And by the end of the 3rd lunch, I knew this had to be the guy. That was spot on.
How did you cast Michael Keaton?
That was Tim Burton.
Why?
He worked with him on Beetlejuice. He knew what he was doing on Clean and Sober. And
oh, that's why. Because it's in his brand at that time, he was just doing comedies.
Correct. He had been doing comedies.
Clean and Sober hadn't come out yet.
Correct.
So he saw what he could do as a dramatic actor.
Yeah. When they first told me that Tim wanted Michael Keaton, I was apoplectic. I said, wait, I've been at this for like 7 years.
That's what I thought.
For a dark and serious Batman, and now you want Mr. Mom, as Batman? So they showed me a rough cut of Clean and Sober, and I took it all back. And it was when Tim Burton explained to everybody that this movie had to be about Bruce Wayne, somebody who's so driven, so obsessed, to the point of being psychotic, that the only way to avoid unintentional laughs from the audience when they see him getting dressed up as a bat was to have someone like Michael Keaton instead of a serious, quote unquote, serious actor of the day, nor, since Jack Nicholson was signed to play the Joker, nor could you have an unknown play Batman to Nicholson. Nicholson would wipe the screen with the guy.
That was genius casting, by the way. Oh, my Lord.
You know that story, right?
No.
Oh, my God.
I just know there was a lot of money involved.
All right, let's go back to ground zero. May 1980. It's Memorial Weekend. Talk about coincidence. I'm leaving my job at UA. I get on the bus going back to New Jersey. I get the afternoon paper. It's the Post. I open it up to the movie section. What are the holiday movies that are opening up? There's one called The Empire Strikes Back, and another one's a horror movie called The Shining. And as I turn the page, Kevin, there's this maniacal-looking picture of Jack Nicholson peering around a doorway. It's now the iconic Here's Johnny shot. I go, oh my bleeping God, this is the only actor who can play the Joker. I tore that picture out of the newspaper. I get home, I run to my desk, I take white out, and I white out Jack's face. I took a red pen and did his lips. I took a green magic marker, I did his hair. I went back and I showed everybody involved. Jack Nicholson is the only actor, look, who can play the Joker. That was my dream.
Oh, God.
Now, I saved that picture. I never throw out anything. It's in my book.
He lives across the street from me.
Oh, does he really?
Jack does.
And he's from my neighborhood in Jersey.
He is?
Yeah. Yeah, he went to Manasquan High School.
You're kidding me.
No, grew up like a Neptune. He used to hang out at the Osprey. Did you ever go to the Osprey bar?
No, but the Stone Pony.
We can do a whole talk on that
We're
one.
actually doing well because we're bringing this sort of full circle. You did end up paying back your investors, by the way, in that first movie, did you not?
Yes.
How much did they make on their investment, percentage-wise?
They did fine.
You took care of them.
The Batman took care of them.
Beautiful. Before we break, what is something that nobody knows about you? You've done so many interviews. Tell me something that no one's asked you before.
I fell in love with the first girl I set eyes on in college on day one.
Oh.
And all I heard for 4 years.
What was her name?
Nancy.
I'm joking. No, her name was Jill St. John.
Yeah, right. Actually, Nancy should give some credit to Jill St. John. Okay.
Tell me about Nancy.
So she wasn't even unpacked when we went out for the first time. And all we heard was, you don't fall in love with the first person you see in college. It doesn't happen. So we are closing in right now on our 52nd anniversary.
Oh, my God. Mazel tov.
Thank you.
So, again, heading into the last minutes of this interview, I want to ask you about a significant mistake that you made sometime in your career that you really learned from, turned out to be a great life lesson.
Due to my very nature, my tendency is always to believe somebody, and my tendency is always to give them the benefit of the doubt. I got severely burned by that early on.
3 times, you said.
Yeah, it turned out to be 3 times. I should have learned from the first time. But years later, I made the same mistake. And years later, I made the final same mistake.
Trusting wrong people?
Yeah. And believing them when they said something and assuming it was true.
In retrospect, what did you learn from it? And what would you have done differently?
One of the great things about getting older is, A, the amount of self-confidence that you build from your experiences. You know, for many, many years now, I have not had butterflies in my stomach because I either know how to handle a situation or if a problem arises or who to call. Also, as you get older, you lose part of your filter. And I've learned, A, I don't have to be liked by everyone. And the most liberating thing I've learned is it's absolutely fine to say no.
Well, you learned that obviously early on.
Yes. And these are the things that are part of life's lessons. And for me, the only way I could learn it was through some hard experience.
Okay, but you said you made the same mistake. So
Yeah.
What would you have done differently? Was it have paper?
A, I would have,
Like a contract?
even though at those moments in time I couldn't afford lawyers, I would have brought in lawyers because it's too expensive not to, as opposed to bringing them in. B, I've learned this thing called due diligence, where you've got to do your homework and you've got to really learn who you're dealing with. The basic business tenets. I did not go to business school. Nobody taught me these things. I was left to learn them the harder way.
Life lessons on the street.
Yeah.
You told me at lunch not too long ago that you got screwed over pretty badly by somebody or some company, and you decided not to go after them.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a terrific lesson. Most people are like, sue those mother effers or whatever. And because of your life experience, you probably realized, you know what? Life's too damn short. Without getting too specific, or you feel free to get specific, but I don't want to put you on the spot. Tell me about that.
Yeah. At that point in time, we were dealing with a very, very wealthy businessman in New York. And I had created a primetime TV series that I wanted to do. And he was interested in committing to back us on it. And instead, what ultimately happened was he did an end run around us and took the ball and my ball and ran with it. And I was in shock. I mean, I just couldn't believe this happened, that anybody would do that or why they would do that. And my partner, Ben, who was my dad's age and very sage, Ben said, Michael, I know you want to sue him, but this is a very wealthy, powerful person who has 20 lawyers working for him every day, controls a lot of law firms in all the major cities. If we are to sue him, which he said I'm willing to do, it'll be 5 years before we get to court. It will cost well over $1 million in legal fees and expenses. But worse, it's going to eat you up emotionally. It's going to eat up your time. It's going to divert you from doing new things with your time and your brain and your spirit. So my advice is, you're a young enough man, learn from this, and let's move on and concentrate only on new things. And he was absolutely right about it. He was also the one, Ben, who told me, at your worst moments, at your lowest moments, when everything is going bad, when everything's collapsing, he said, you have to say, quote, "This is the greatest thing that could have happened to me because." He goes, and then you have to fill in that blank.
Mm-hmm.
I said, come on, Ben. He goes, you need to fill in the blank.
I just asked the question.
You did.
Not 5 minutes ago. I said, what was the mistake? What did you learn from it? Because everything has to have a reason for being, or it was in vain, right?
And when I was at the lowest point of my Batman career, at the time of movies Batman and Robin and Catwoman, and I was at my lowest point, Ben said, do it, Michael. You got to do it. I said, okay, this is the greatest thing that could have happened to me because the studio's going to get burned by this. And next time they're going to want to do it the way I always want to do it, which is the dark and serious Batman. So like the Phoenix Rising, in the ashes of these movies that upset me as a true blue Batman guy, comes the genius of Christopher Nolan and the Dark Knight trilogy.
Michael, I can't thank you enough for being here, for sharing your stories, and for being such a mensch and a Hamish man. It's a privilege and honor to know you.
Kevin, thank you so much. As you know, the first time we met, it felt like we were talking for 6 seconds, but it was probably like 6 hours. We have a commonality. We have a bond that has been incredible in so many different ways.
Honestly, I think it's a decency. I think it's the fact that we have conviction and we share passion. I think that that's what it is, and I am moved by it.
Same here, my friend.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. I encourage you to check out all of the Batman and Batman-related movies in the universe discussed here today. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I am very excited to bring you a special episode all about the art of the focus group. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.